Welcome to Fuck Your Feelings.
Should we say something like welcome back or something?
I think we just did.
Fair enough.
So you wanted to talk about like the healthcare system. Is that because someone died in an ER today?
That's one of the reasons. I guess that's the reason why it kind of popped into my brain, but
Yeah.
the main reason is because of how I think Canada is perceived as a free healthcare nation, utopia type country, when really it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think that especially a lot of Americans that listen to our podcast should realize that they have a really good system compared to ours, believe it or not. In Canada, you might wait months to see your family doctor.
Months.
In Canada,
I've been on the wait list for a family doctor for 5 years.
right, to get a family doctor. If you already
get a
have
family
one,
doctor.
then you might wait months. But if you need a new family doctor, yeah, it's years, like you said.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous. And if you go to the ER, you might wait 11, 12 hours or more. I know you said that some of the wait times in your area are even longer.
Yep. They haven't been overly long recently, but I think that's because of all the I'll say restrictions are kind of like waning off of everybody. Like everybody's kind of realized that they can just kind of go into the hospital and not have to wait a day or 2 days to see a doctor in the ER. But like when COVID was going on, fucking like I'm sure it was like this everywhere, but everybody went in for anything they could think of and claimed they had COVID, and that just threw wait times through the roof. But the problem is now no one's doing that, but wait times are still through the roof.
Yeah, it was bad during COVID, but it is also bad in general. Even before COVID even happened, it was really bad. And it's lack of doctors, lack of funding, and the biggest thing is doctors from Canada getting their education here and then moving to a better country for pay, which is, usually America, where they get way better pay for, doing exactly what they're doing here. So that's why we're losing a lot of our doctors, and it's mainly the government's fault. And the reason and it's not just like some person being like, raving against the government. The government is who is controlling the healthcare in Canada and who is funding our healthcare, which in turn is funding the doctors and giving them a paycheck. So the reason they're not getting paid very good is because the government is not paying them very good, and they're leaving.
And now I can say, because like I've got a background dealing with immigration and citizenship permits and shit like that, right? So I can say that there is doctors coming into Canada, and the government isn't putting any stipulations on them having to stay practicing in a certain area once they come in. They can literally get into Canada, establish a base in Canada, use that base to go to the States and get paid like triple what we're paying them.
Right, because the doctors that we're importing are not coming from like America or England. They're coming from India. They're coming from Pakistan. You know what I mean? Like, and then they're going to America.
I've seen a lot when I was dealing with it, I seen a lot of doctors coming from the UK. That was where I noticed like a ton of doctors coming from was the UK.
They must have a worse healthcare system than we have then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's the running joke about their dental system, right?
Right, exactly.
Their government dental system is our hockey program.
Yeah. So I think this the reason I wanted to do this was just to elaborate on the reason why our healthcare system isn't doing so well.
And like not even the reasoning behind it, because the reasoning is it's a whole rabbit hole we can go into. But the problem is kind of like on the surface, there's no one really actually doing anything. There's a lot of people saying, there's a lot of politicians saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and doing fucking nothing once they get into office, once they get a seat in parliament, once they get a riding in their area. They just forget about all their healthcare promises and they just focus on everything else. And now everything seems to be focused around everything except healthcare, to be honest.
Well, another thing of note, a lot of people think that Canada has free healthcare. Free healthcare is not not a realistic thing because we pay out the ass in taxes in order to pay for the healthcare that we receive.
Yeah.
In some areas, taxes can get as high as I think 15% in Canada. In the area that I'm in, the sales tax in my province is 15%.
Yeah.
And I think most American states, I'm pretty sure every single American state has a lower sales tax than the province that I'm in. So we're really paying out the ass in taxes to pay for the so-called free healthcare. You know, nothing is free. Nothing is ever free from the government because you're always paying for it through one way or another.
Yeah. So like while you were talking, I pulled up Canada.ca for the federal tax rates of 2022. So through all of Canada, 15% of the first $50,197 that's your taxable income is 15%. After that, it goes to 20.5. Then it goes to 26%. Then it goes 29%. And then if you earn over, I'll just say $200,000, you pay 33% tax.
And that's just income tax.
That's
not even
federal income tax.
That's federal income tax. That's not even taken into account into federal and provincial sales tax is what I was talking about. 15% is sales tax.
You take that 15%, and then where I am in Nova Scotia, my provincial income tax is 6.9%, up to like $32,000. So we'll just say it's 32%, or no, I guess that'd be 22% is what I pay where I'm at in income tax just for working.
And that's just income tax.
Yeah.
Then you get taxed when you take whatever you have left and go buy goods and services. So then you have even less money. So another tack on another 15% on top of that, and that's what Canadians are paying. Not to mention property tax.
Yeah.
And it just keeps adding up. And the level of healthcare that we are getting supposedly for free is abysmal compared to somewhere like America. I have seen the differences and I have heard firsthand accounts of the difference in healthcare between Canada and America. There is a reason why America is considered one of the greatest free countries in the world, and it is because they have one of the best medical industries in the world. And I will say this, they will not leave you on the side of the road in America like so many people think. And I'm now speaking to the Canadians who are listening.
Yeah.
They will not leave somebody on the side of the road and not take care of them because they don't have insurance or they don't have money. They will take care of anybody, this concept that some Canadians have when healthcare would go privatized, that, oh, they're just gonna, like, you call an ambulance, oh, you get no money, you get no healthcare, not gonna help you. That is a fallacy, and it's actually kind of sad that Canadians have been brainwashed into believing that. And I don't know where this comes from. I think it's some kind of pop culture thing. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say where that came from because, like, even in Canada, if we call an ambulance, we still have to pay for it, right?
Right.
Like, if I have a heart attack on walking to my car and someone drives by, calls an ambulance for me, I wake up in the hospital, I just got an ambulance bill.
Right.
I did not consent to it. Someone else consented to it, but now I have to pay it because I was the patient.
Well, I'd rather live and have a have a hospital bill than, not live.
I'd rather
That's just
live
my
without a
opinion.
hospital bill.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a heart attack and die,
But
your
I mean,
example.
it's the issue of consent that keeps getting brought up by, like, fucking everybody now. Is like, what weighs into, like, at what point am I able to say as a patient, I didn't consent to the ambulance ride, you can't bill me for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it really depends on whether you're dying or not, I guess. Because I know,
Even if you die after taking an ambulance ride, you still owe.
well, I called an ambulance for my dad one time because his blood pressure was 210 over 110, I think it was.
Jeez.
And they got there and they were like, "Oh, yeah, you seem okay." And then I was like, "Well, take his blood pressure. It's like super through the roof." And they were like, they took it and they were like, "Yeah, it is real high. You don't have to come with us though." And I was like, what do you mean he doesn't have to come with you? I mean, he could have a stroke with that kind of blood pressure.
Yeah.
And he's also 72 years old. Imagine a 72-year-old with fucking 200 over 110 blood pressure, and you're like telling the patient, you can come with us if you want.
Yeah.
Like, that is the healthcare system in a nutshell in Canada. And of course, my dad, he's like, I don't feel great, but I don't think I'm like in serious, like, I don't think I'm gonna die. I'm like, Dad, you don't realize like how bad that is. Like how like you could like pop a fucking artery easily with that kind of like high blood pressure, especially at your age. And he's like, oh, I don't want to go. I was like, I can't force him. And then they were like, oh yeah, it's probably a good idea. Here, sign this disclosure document. He signs it, they leave. I'm just like, really? This is so we can't sue them. It's crazy, man. Like this is the healthcare system in Canada. He got charged for the and he got charged
Fuck.
for the ambulance
He's
bill.
still.
Sorry, go ahead.
They charged him to check his blood pressure, basically.
Yep.
Fuck.
Pretty much, yep.
But yeah, like, if I even had to call an ambulance for my father, that right there is a signal that something's fucking wrong, right? Like, you're going whether you like it or not. But if they show up and they're like,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't really have to come with us, I'd be like, yeah, your field supervisor's coming out here and we're going to have a little chat while you bring him to the hospital. Like, fuck that. Like, your job isn't to assess on scene. Your job is to figure out, how often does this person regularly call an ambulance? Does he call every day? Cool. Yeah, he doesn't need to go. Has he called before? Nope. Yeah, we're taking him. Like, get something on the record to show that some medical services were required at the time. So if something does happen down the line,
Right.
everybody covers their own ass. A fucking
The last time an ambulance was at that house was almost 10 years ago when my dad's
Jesus.
lung collapsed. So that is like the last time. So it's not like they're calling like every day on a whim just because they're like, whatever, not feeling great. It was a serious medical issue and they just ignored it. Luckily, we figured out what the issue was, and it's resolved now, but that it was actually a turning point in my mind about the level of healthcare in this country, especially for
like
seniors.
I'll say this because I won't go into too much detail about why this happened to me. But I ended up in the hospital overnight in, what do they call it, in the middle of nowhere, rural, or yeah. So at like a rural hospital, it was a nice hospital. All the staff and everybody there was friendly as fuck. They didn't have the services to help me, so there was no ambulances available, no medical, no patient transports available, or anything like that. They basically told me I had to travel 2 hours. They couldn't tell me how I was going to travel, to go wait in another ER after spending a night in a hospital. I waited probably an hour in the ER waiting room, and then probably another 4 or 5 hours actually like screened through the ER waiting room to wait to see a doctor. And then even then, it was basically like, yeah, like, you're good to go, like, you can go home. No idea how the fuck I was getting home, but I had to take another 2 hour drive to get home.
So did you have you drive yourself from one
Yep.
hospital to the other?
Yep.
Wow.
And like
That is
that's
crazy.
like, I went in, I don't know, it would have been probably about 5 o'clock in the evening, which I get it. So it's a small rural hospital. There's not a lot of doctors. Cool. Maybe they can help me in the morning. I'll just fucking stay here. I'm here already. Fucking whatever. And then fucking, nope, can't help you. You got to go to another hospital. Go there, wait, get sent home, and it's like, what the fuck was all this for? And that's
Right. And that's
the problem, is that
sorry, go ahead.
I witnessed something that kind of brought light to the reason why we have problems with ambulances. It's because a lot of people call an ambulance to skip the wait time in the waiting room for the ER.
Yeah, we have problems top to bottom.
Yeah. Well, what
with
we're
our
talking
healthcare.
about is just trying to get into the ER. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah, absolutely.
once you're in the ER, like once you've been triaged, you're still like, you've been triaged, you go back out into the waiting room, you're waiting for a doctor to free up so he can call you in. And at this point, it's pretty much first come, first serve. There's no real urgency of prioritizing anything like that. And there's been times where I've seen people unloaded off of an ambulance, put into the waiting room of the ER, and then called back in. Now, the ambulance unloads you directly into the ER area, so you have to leave where all the doctors and nurses are, go out into the waiting room where like everybody's waiting to see a doctor, and then you have to basically still wait in line to go back through the doors that you just left through.
It's a messed up system
it's
from top to bottom.
It's full blown
100%.
retarded, because like there's trying to figure out how to say what happened without going into detail. But we'll say so yeah. Well, I think I said earlier that you know my mother passed, right? So what
Right.
had happened, like I'm not going to get into too much detail about the whole thing, but probably about, I'll say 4 months before she passed, she had heart problems. She's never had heart problems before in her life. There's no heart disease in the family. So she had heart problems, and she ended up going to the hospital just to get assessed. There was, I guess, the test that they ordered for her to test her heart. I think it was a stress test. But what the problem was is there was 2 types of stress tests, and they ordered the wrong one, apparently. So what ended up happening is, fast forward, what did I say, 4 or 5 months later, she's back in the hospital. She's got heart problems, and at this point, her heart was weakened because they didn't diagnose properly, because they didn't perform the proper test in the first place. So that's
so
4 to
messed
5
up.
months of just, I'll say, constant heart problems. Like, it may not have been crippling, but there was still something going on that was irritating the heart, and that's like it. She didn't die from heart failure. There was something else going on. But yeah, like, that's exactly the problem that happens all too often, especially here. Like, I'll say I'm in Cape Breton in Nova Scotia, and the regional hospital has so many people in there that would rather be on the mainland, because the cleanliness of this hospital is disgusting. Like, I've spoken to people who worked as doctors there, who worked as nurses, who worked as janitorial, who worked as grounds, and they all agree it's fucking disgusting compared to other places that they've worked at. And that is the biggest hospital on the island.
Well, medical malpractice is extremely common everywhere, but I think it's even more common here, especially when doctors aren't getting paid
Yeah.
from the patient. They're getting paid from the government. Like, I'll take my family doctor as a perfect example. And I think this relates to both what you said and what I said when it comes to incompetence
Yeah.
in the medical field in Canada, because my doctor will take you into her office and, like, if I say, okay, I've had a cough for like 3 weeks, right? And she's like, oh, okay. Well, let me look inside your throat. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you this. I think you have acid reflux. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try this medication. And then I'm like, okay. And also, I have this issue. And then she's like, oh, make a second appointment for that. And I'm like, why? I'm right here. She was like, no, make a second appointment with my secretary and then come back in 2 weeks and we'll deal with that. And I'm just like, how does that make any sense? Do they get paid by
Yep.
each visit? I'm starting to think that's
Yep,
the
they do.
common denominator here. They want you to keep coming back so they get paid per visit. So if I'm having an urgent issue that needs to be taken care of, I have to wait another 2 weeks to a month, or sometimes longer, depending on how busy they are. And by that time, it could be a really bad thing. Like, it could be way worse than what it was when I actually saw her to begin with. You see, and that's the kind of thing that really irritates me about this system that we have
Yeah.
set up. And I don't see any way out of it. But I will say one last thing on this issue. And there's an actual law in Canada that says that you cannot pay for healthcare in Canada. It's illegal to pay for healthcare in Canada. So therefore, we are stuck with this socialized healthcare system that is killing people all around the
Yeah.
country because of our stupid
Now,
fucking laws.
there is, I don't want it to sound like there's no medical procedures that you can pay for, because there is. Like, there's definitely medical procedures that you can pay for.
Cosmetic.
I guess I'm not sure if gender affirmation surgery would be cosmetic, because
I would say probably.
because like, I guess it would be just the outside of your body.
I guess it depends if you're a grower or a shower. Sorry.
But yeah,
go
like
ahead.
there's a certain category of stuff that we can pay for, like psychiatrists and shit like that. We can pay for. They're technically medical services, I guess. But like we can pay for private and shit.
Right. There's also, yeah, I mean, what I'm talking about is
Yeah,
basic medical care. Like, if I wanted to like get the best of the best cancer treatment
yeah.
in
You
Canada, I could
couldn't
not
even
do that.
bribe
I
anybody.
would have to go to America. Right. I would have to go to America to get the
Yeah.
best cancer treatment. If I had the money to do so, that's what I would be doing if I had cancer. Um, but yeah, like that is an example I wanted to make. And we could actually go back to the first point that you made at the very beginning when we first started this was the people that are dying in emergency rooms in Canada
Yeah.
waiting to get seen. And I don't think
And
we
it,
talked about that, but it's a very huge thing. This person, I believe it was a man, he was in an emergency room complaining about pains in his like stomach or something like that. And 11 hours later, he was dead in his seat, sitting, waiting to be
yeah.
seen by a doctor. And they wheeled his ass out of
I'm
there
gonna
like nothing
pull up
happened.
it's ctvnews.ca just to kind of back up what you're saying. So it says
Maybe link it in the description of the YouTube video
yeah, I can do that.
if you can, if you
So
remember.
the headline is patient dies while waiting hours to be seen in New Brunswick emergency department. Fredericton, New Brunswick. The death of a patient in the waiting room of a Fredericton Hospital's emergency department this week is prompting calls for major improvements to the province's healthcare system. So this one, I'm actually reading the one from, it was posted July 14th, 2022. So that's what, 11 days ago.
Right. So like
Yeah.
like a week and a half ago.
It says, John Staples, a residential support worker, witnessed the incident early Tuesday morning as he waited with a client at the Dr. Everett Chalmers Hospital and posted details on social media. He said the man appeared to be in a lot of pain and discomfort as he waited for hours in a wheelchair, but eventually appeared to fall asleep. The ER attendant came out to check on people and checked on him, Staples said in an interview Wednesday. She scurried back to the ER very professionally, not to raise any alarms, and came back with a few other people. They wheeled him to the back. As they did, they called it code blue. Now, code blue would be, well, they go into it. It's cardiac or respiratory arrest. Unfortunately, the gentleman passed away right there with us. He was literally at the threshold of getting medical attention and did not get it. Staples said he doesn't fault the busy ER staff, but feels there's something wrong with the healthcare system and the changes are needed. I think there needs to be a really long, hard look at what we've had in place for healthcare. Why are people dying in the waiting rooms? I saw people leave the emergency room without being seen because they were frustrated with the long wait times. And like, I don't want to read the whole article, but that is the one on the 14th. Now,
The gist of it.
yeah, this
That's the gist
one,
of
this is globalnews.ca. I can get a CTV link if we want, but it's the same fucking thing. Another ER death under investigation in New Brunswick called a tragic event. Now, this one, I think I told you, sounds fishy to me, just the way that everything is being worded in the release. So what they say is Vitality Health Network says a patient died in the emergency room of the Edmonton Regional Hospital on July 24th following a quote-unquote tragic event. President and CEO Dr. France Desrosiers said in the release, the person who had been admitted to the emergency department lost their life under unforeseeable and exceptional circumstances. The health authority provided little detail about what transpired on Sunday, but said no healthcare workers or staff were injured. That sounds weird to me to say in a release. I'll get back to that in a minute. I want to keep going here. The network also wishes to acknowledge the exemplary work and professionalism of its staff in handling this unfortunate incident. Desrosiers said in her statement. The health authorities said due to the delicate nature of the incident, no further details will be provided. I think they're supposed to say provided, but they don't. They say provide to the public at this time. Rest assured that a comprehensive internal root cause assessment of the incident is underway, she said. The network also collaborates with police authorities and the coroner in their respective investigations. This news comes just 2 weeks after a patient died in the waiting room of the ER at the Dr. Everett Chalmers Hospital in Fredericton. Now,
Okay, so that may or may not be related to what we're talking about.
like, doesn't that sound...
But it is a very
That sounds really
thing.
weird to me, the way that that's all worded. Doesn't that sound weird to you, that they literally went out of the way to say no healthcare workers or staff were injured?
Yeah, that is weird. I guess we're not going to find out for sure until the investigation, but if it's related to what we're talking about, then that's another death, another casualty because of our healthcare system.
Yeah, because they don't say he was waiting.
And then,
like, they make it seem like he was actually in where all the doctors and nurses are, in the back room, basically. And something happened back
right,
there.
they could be making it sound like that on purpose too.
Now,
yeah, they could be making it sound like that on purpose too.
Hospital is under a different ownership. The company that owns the hospital in Fredericton is Horizon Health Services. As far as I know, I'm going to double check. And this one is, yes, it is president of the Horizon Health Network. And the one in Edmundston, because it's a northern New Brunswick, right? Like, so it's the Vitality Health Network. So that makes me feel like it was in basically a French speaking community, because it's a French hospital. And yeah,
well, it is Edmundston.
They even
very French.
They go down later to
French.
say, where's that at?
It could be a translation issue too. Why they're talking about whether or not the person, the staff is injured or whatever. I would like to know too that 2 years ago in Moncton, a similar thing happened where a lady was waiting 12 hours to get seen. She got seen, and then a few hours later, she died in the hospital. And a lot of people are speculating, saying that if it didn't take them 12 hours to see this woman, she might still be alive. And I would have to agree, because 12 hours is a long time when you're looking for urgent medical
you're
care.
Not going to the hospital.
Now, this is common sense.
11 hours.
Right. This is common sense. The emergency room is for emergencies. Right. And there was another example.
So here's
in
the
Ontario,
one you were talking about. Sorry to
3 years
you there.
ago.
Globalnews.ca
Yeah,
again. The headline is "Woman dies after 11-hour wait to see a doctor in New Brunswick emergency room."
11.
Miriam Porter spent some of the final hours of her life hunched over and moaning in pain as she waited to be seen by an emergency room doctor at a Moncton hospital. Moncton's horrible. If you ever need a hospital, don't go into the Moncton hospitals. I'll get back to that in a minute. Porter waited for 11 hours before she was eventually seen. It's pure,
in agony.
So the quote, it looks like it's a tweet. She was having a hard time breathing. She was visibly uncomfortable. She couldn't stand up. She couldn't eat. What else? They needed to do blood work to find out that she had what? To find out what she had. I'm guessing is what they mean. That she was in acute kidney failure. Doctors worked on her sister overnight, but her kidneys eventually shut down and she died just after 9 a.m. Sunday. Porter was 58 and she had 3 children.
Okay, you don't think if they saw her 11 hours earlier, they could probably help her? Imagine going through 11 hours of kidney failure only to be so-called looked at by a doctor and then dying a few hours later. That is insane. That is insane. Anybody who could possibly justify that is morally reprehensible. Okay. And as I was saying earlier, there was a woman in Ontario. She died in the emergency room waiting room as well 3 years ago. I don't have links. You're better at finding them than me, obviously, because you've been pulling up everything that I said. But yeah, it was a Native woman in Ontario, and she died in the emergency room. And like this, in the past like 5 years, that's what, like 4 people, and that is like an outlier, right? Like that is something that is being reported. How many of these are not being reported? They're actually getting in to see somebody, but because of the wait time, they're dying or they're having serious complications. It's something really that has to be addressed. Canada needs healthcare reform.
Oh,
Big
absolutely.
time.
I'm trying to find the one that you were talking about there.
Yeah, I should have had it already, but I wasn't thinking that we were gonna bring up all this stuff.
Yeah. If this is the one that you're talking about,
Ontario Native lady.
It says it was in Quebec, October 2020. This is NBCnews.com. I couldn't find any Canadian sources on this. Just going to throw that out there. No Canadian sources on this. It says dying Indigenous woman films video of nurses taunting her at Canadian hospital. The hospital patient, Joyce Ekwan, died while facing incredibly racist and insensitive taunts by Quebec healthcare staff, said the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations.
Okay, I don't know if that was the one. I don't think so. I think it was in Ontario. I think it was in St. Catharines, Ontario.
Take a look. Now, what I was saying before about the Moncton hospitals, do you know what happened in the Moncton hospitals? It was fucking. It was
not sure what you're referring to.
I think it was like it broke right before COVID or right in the early stage of COVID.
Right at the right time to get swept under the rug is what you're
almost saying. So what happened in I think I know it was under an umbrella of the Horizon Health Network hospitals. I know there was at least one hospital in Moncton that had this. So what happened was there was multiple counts of female women's, highlighting that because that's what the news said, female women's being induced for labor without their consent because the nurses wanted to get the birth done quick so they could finish their job. I'm going to see if I can pull that.
I vaguely remember that. I do remember the inducing thing, but I don't remember the context. So yeah, I would like to learn more about this, but I mean, one more example of the failure of the Canadian healthcare system.
So here's one. So this is cbc.ca. This is in New Brunswick. Published April 1st, 2019. So yeah, it would have been like right before COVID. Because COVID, or no, yeah, right at the very beginning, because COVID was like, what, March?
No,
I thought it was like March 2019 it started.
No, it was like the end of 2019.
So beginning this of 2020. Says, headline reads, Moncton nurse accused of misuse of labor-inducing drug sees license suspended. So this isn't the initial article. I've been rushing trying to get like 4 articles up here, but an obstetrics nurse who was fired from the Moncton hospital and is being investigated by the RCMP over allegations she administered a labor-inducing drug to 2 women without consent has also had her license suspended indefinitely. The New Brunswick Nurses Association suspended the registered nurse's license immediately because of the seriousness of the allegations and because she was working at a second facility. Executive Director Lori Jane said Monday, declining to disclose which facility. and it was under the Horizon Health Network, because from my, I could be way off, but from my understanding, in New Brunswick, if you work for the Horizon Health Network, they can move you hospital to hospital to fill voids, but they can't move you outside of the Horizon umbrella. You can't work for like the Vitalite hospital that we were just talking about there. I could be totally wrong, but that's my understanding of how that works.
Well, that's obviously disgusting. I mean, inducing somebody into labor without their consent is disgusting. Obviously, the person going through the childbirth should obviously be informed of whether or not they're getting any drugs to induce labor. I mean, it's good that they were. Did you say they were fired?
She was
or just
fired,
suspended?
and her license was suspended indefinitely. So she's done. She's got.
Oh, okay.
She ain't no nurse no more. Not in Canada, anyway. Oh, sorry.
Well,
not
good.
in New Brunswick, because I think there's a different nursing union.
Honestly,
in, like,
I would even say
Nova Scotia and shit like that.
Probably. I would even say it should be nationwide, and she should be brought up on charges, because giving somebody something without their consent, that is, what is that, battery? That's got to be at least battery, right?
If
it's assault. Giving somebody something
if you
without
want to
their
get
consent,
into it, it's rape.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, yeah, you're putting
Yeah,
something
maybe.
in someone that they didn't consent to. That's
Yeah. Well, we're not going to get into that today.
I want to read a last excerpt from that. It says a closer analysis of IV bags found tiny puncture marks and traces of oxytocin. A review of security footage was also conducted. The nurse was fired not long after. Gillespie says that women who gave birth in the hospital, regardless of time frame, are encouraged to reach out to the hospital with any questions. That tells me.
So oxytocin was
that's to induce
substance.
What's it say? Oxytocin is a drug regularly used in pregnancies to induce or speed up labor. So from my understanding, it just relaxes muscles. Right. So it would be like a muscle relaxant.
So they were literally taking a needle and puncturing the IV bag and shooting that shit into the bag.
Think about it this way.
That is fucked up.
All IV bags that I've seen have a little dangle hanging off of it that you're supposed to put the shit in. So the fact that you're putting it, I'm going to assume, above the level of saline or whatever is in the IV bag.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Well, maybe she got caught because it was spraying the patient or something. I don't know. But like, that tells me that there's something fucking wrong with whoever's doing it, because they're not thinking about, like, how do I not get caught? Oh, I'll just put it in the IV bag. Oh shit, they're going to see that hole. Well, I should have used the other one that millions of nurses use. You know what I mean? Like,
right. And I'm wondering if maybe, like, I don't even know, man. Like, I don't know enough about medicine to know if every single one of them have that little thing that you put the needle in, or if, like, some of them just have the bag connected directly to the lady's arm just to make sure she gets some fluids in her, or what. Like, I don't know for sure, but I will say that is, like, jank as fuck, and, like, that is, like, I don't know, a ghetto. That's so ghetto. Just like stabbing the bag and like injecting that shit in there. She should be arrested and charged with a criminal offense, because there's got to be some kind of crime that. I mean, giving somebody something without their consent,
and like it's literally something that you see in movies, right? Like it's a mob hitting a hospital. You put no, they don't even put it. They don't even poke a hole right in the bag because they don't want to be caught. They use that little fucking dangle that we were talking about.
Yeah.
So here's one.
Well, I mean, it reminds me of like. Sorry, you go ahead.
So
I'm getting off topic.
Just like I literally searched like ER death hospital just to see what would come up. This one's out of Vancouver. This was published September 9th, 2021. I'd not heard of this. It says family traumatized by mother's waiting room death as more BC hospitals see COVID-19 surge. I'm sure they're.
What year did you say?
This
What year
was
did you
last
say
year,
this was?
September 9th, 2021.
Wow. Okay, so there's more
Yeah,
that I
that's
didn't even
like
know
I
about.
had no idea that this happened. So it says the Kamloops family is still in
Wow.
shock after the family matriarch, mother, the mother, went to the hospital with stomach pain Tuesday and never came home. She died in the ER waiting room after waiting 6 hours without seeing a doctor. Their tragic story comes as CTV News Vancouver has obtained internal documents outlining more surgical cancellations. So they're kind of burying it like right there. And then it says on Tuesday evening, 70-year-old Susan Tasson, Tasson, went to Royal Inland Hospital in Kamloops with her eldest daughter complaining of stomach pain. Staff, I thought it said triggered. Staff triaged her and sent them to the waiting room, where she fell asleep on her daughter's shoulder. She never woke up. My sister's still dealing with the trauma of it all because she didn't expect to see her mother die in front of her. Yeah, fucking no one does.
My God.
She said,
That is
Mom just
fucked.
put her head down on her shoulder and kind of rested for a minute. And she basically fell asleep and passed away while she was sitting there. Like, the problem I have with all the deaths in the hospitals that are waiting to see a doctor, I blame the triage. I blame the triage process that they have. Not necessarily the triage nurse or the nurses that are triaging. It's the process that they go through for triage. Because they don't necessarily look for stuff. They just take you at your word. I understand that should be common sense, that you should be telling them what's going on with you. But if you just have a pain and you can't describe it, the nurses who are doing triage should be able to ask certain probing questions to narrow it down. Like it's much like customer service. You have to assume everyone is an idiot and try and get the information from them. If they're teaching that in customer service, it should be taught to triage.
Okay, I will give you that, and I will raise you lack of funding for hospitals around the country, not having enough staff to treat patients in a timely manner that is causing this to happen. So it's not just what you said, it's also the lack of staffing. And with the amount of money the government gets for healthcare through taxes, there should be enough staff. Where is that money going? I want to know where that money's going. Is it going into their pockets? Is it going to overseas, to Ukraine? Foreign aid? Where's this money? Where is this money going? The money needs to be put back into our healthcare system. If we're gonna have a healthcare system based on socialism, we at least have to put most of our money into it. For Christ's sake, if you can't go buy insurance and get good healthcare that way, yeah, if it's illegal to buy insurance, healthcare insurance in Canada, then why the hell isn't the government giving us decent healthcare for our money's worth? That is just brain dead. And I think that also goes into what you said with the lack of training for the triage nurses. That could be a large chunk of the money could be going to training these people to be doing their job better. And having them not have to work 13-hour shifts or whatever the hell they're doing because there's enough staff available to relieve them. It all comes down to funding, man. That's the end all be
Yeah.
all. And it's the government behind
And
it.
the worst part of it is uh, we'll use the states as kind of a reference for what should be done in Canada, because like you said, it's sure you might have to take out a mortgage on your house, but you're not going to lose your leg. right? Like you'll be able to afford the surgery to get your leg and go back to your house. Sure, in some cases you'll lose your house, whatever. There's extreme circumstances for everything. But what the states have is they have like, all I can think of is commercials of like, I've seen so many commercials for the Cancer Center of America, right? Like they have dedicated facilities to treat people with cancer. I don't think we have anything like that, not at least where I'm at, that you can just
We don't.
go.
We have public
Yeah,
hospitals.
like you can
That's
just
all we
go to the
have.
hospital and then you go to a tiny department within the hospital and that's it. Like
Exactly.
you don't
Exactly. And
have
that's the problem.
one specialized doctor who does nothing but cancer treatments, who is following you through your whole journey from your first diagnosis to your last chemotherapy treatment. They have that option in the States. We don't have that option here. Even if we wanted to get that option, we can't get that option. We have to just take what's given to us. And all too often, what's given to us is someone taking the notes from someone who's dropped a ball, and a life is being lost because there's no, I don't want to say there's no unity, but I can't think of a better word to use. There's no coerciveness. I don't know if I'm using that right, but like there's no way that, sorry, there is a way, but the way that it's happening isn't the way that should be happening. There's no smooth transition from one care provider to another care provider. There's so many gaps and shit that as a patient and a family member, people need to advocate not just for the patient and for the family, but they need to advocate for the previous healthcare provider and the current healthcare provider. So if you're in the hospital right now, sorry, and if you're sitting next to someone and they're getting ready to go into surgery and you have questions, ask the questions to anybody you see in the hall. Bring up any fucking question you have, because the stupidest question, I'll say this a million times, the stupidest question is one that you don't ask. And all too often, it's because you don't ask questions that the healthcare service just fails you, because they're just passing you along just to get you out so they can get another person in. Whereas in the States, they want your money, and they're not getting any more of your money if you're dead.
Yeah. How you gonna fix it then? You have all these complaints but no solutions. And what I would say to that is have an option for healthcare or health insurance, sorry. Have an option for private health insurance if you want to go that route. If you want to use the public health care that Canada provides, then absolutely fill your boots. There should be another option to pay for your own health care. The way America has a healthcare system set up, you can, have, I think it's called Medicaid or something like that, where you can pay into it every month. And then when you have to go to the hospital, they take care of all the billing or whatever. And you have this like extra level of like care above what like the basic, you know, person off the street with no insurance has. That is what I'm in favor of, because that would number one alleviate the strain on the socialized healthcare system that Canada has. And number two, allow for incentive for for example, cancer treatment in Canada, where they're trying to get better equipment, because capitalism, the incentive is monetary gain. Okay. So that incentive would be back if we had a system where you could pay for better healthcare. Would it not? I think it would be. I think it would. And the homeless people still get your basic health care, but the incentive will be there for these corporations and these companies and these healthcare providers to up their ante. If they don't want to lose customers going down to the States, they will want to provide the best healthcare they can possibly provide, right? I think so. It's like a hybrid, right? Sorry.
Yeah, like the problem that we have is there's no incentive for doctors
Right,
and
and there's no
nurses to
incentive
stay
for
in
them
Canada.
to
Like the incentive is a base pay, and then they have to fight just to get, in some cases, a 5 or 10% raise just to keep doing, in 99% of the time, a job they love that they can't afford to keep doing because they spend so much fucking time at the hospital. They spend not enough time at home. I'll say this right off the bat. They pretty much live in the fucking hospital. Sure, you see doctors and nurses like walking around at Walmart and shit. Yeah, that's because they're taking a 45-minute break from the person who just died. They're grabbing a bag of chips at Walmart or something, and then they're going back for another 8 hours. Like they have a, if they are single, they have a house that they just throw money at and never get to
right,
enjoy.
and like the incentive, I think, is the biggest thing that I was trying to talk about, would be to get better technology.
Yeah.
Better technology. It's the basis of innovation through capitalism. And that's why capitalism beat communism, because communism was a stagnant hellhole with nobody actually trying to be the one who invented something to make themselves rich. It helps many people, but it makes that
Yeah.
person rich.
Now,
And that is the incentive that we're missing in a communist and socialist state that a capitalist society has.
I have an idea that I think you might kind of agree with. It's this is something that if I stood in front of like a politician who was totally open to doing something to revamp the healthcare system, this is the idea that I'd preach to them. Would be a privatized hospital with regular nurses and doctors in Canada that get to work in a privatized hospital, right? They get the benefits. They can work at a regular county or regional hospital and still get the income as if they were working in a privatized hospital. They can work through rotational shifts to work in that privatized hospital, to get experience to work with cutting edge technology in that privatized hospital. So that way, when they go back to the non privatized hospital, they know what needs to be done because they can see, they get a taste of what they can see at other places, and they can bring that in to the hospital
Yeah,
that
I
they're
think that's
going
a
back
great I think
out
that's a
of.
great idea, honestly. I think like a hybrid system like what I was talking about plus what you were talking about where you could have people coming in and looking at the kind of technology that's been, brought in by these companies, right?
Yeah, because I think the biggest problem is, like in Canada, there's a lot of doctors who don't know what types of technology are out there because they've never had access to it. And for some, they never will have access to it. So it's kind of an over the top example would be like the Pepsi hospital, right? Like if you go to that hospital, you wouldn't have to pay for any specialized service, right? Everything in there would be Pepsi logos, Pepsi, whatever the fuck, right? You're still getting your free healthcare, right? In Canada, Pepsi's sponsoring everything. Like, I have no problem walking down a hallway with like 50 fucking Pepsi billboards to get better service as opposed to just going to the regular, I don't want to say shithole hospitals that we have, but just the regular hospitals where there's no high tech available for anybody, as opposed to going into a purely sponsored hospital where, I mean, we have the fucking oil sands in fucking Canada. We have people who are literally billionaires in Canada who don't have an option to put money into hospitals. They can donate it to a foundation for the hospital, but they can't build their own hospital and give doctors and nurses the tools they need to work there. And that is the biggest fucking problem we have, is people have, like, I know it's foreign to think that a billionaire would build a hospital and let people work in there for free, but there's a lot of money in Canada, and there's not a lot of options for people with that money to put it into healthcare. They have to wait for the politicians to put it into healthcare, and they're not doing it.
Right. Well, I don't know how I don't think we would ever see like a big corporation like that doing what you said. I mean, it might be a good publicity stunt to like pull something like that off. I don't know if it would pay off in the long run. I'm not sure, but it would be really interesting to see like something like that. But I mean, as long as like the people that worked there were professional and, you know, did their job correctly, I mean, it'd probably be okay. But I would like to see a system in Canada where at least you have the option to pay for healthcare. And because right now the way we have it, and it's I'm not afraid to say that it's a socialist system, and I'm not being hyperbolic because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It is 100% socialist. And you can look up the term, you can look up Canada socialized healthcare. That's exactly what it is. Not being hyperbolic whatsoever. But the problem with that is it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or a homeless person, you get the same shitty treatment. You get the same shitty healthcare. I mean, that is not, you know, people will say, oh, well, that's not a bad thing. Well, yeah, the shitty part of my statement is the bad part. It's bad. People are dying. You know?
Well,
it's crazy to think that people would rather have healthcare that's terrible across the board than have some kind of capitalist system where you can pay for healthcare.
Now, here's a rhetorical question. If Canada's healthcare is so good, how come when I search socialized healthcare countries, the 5 socialized medicine programs around the world that work don't have Canada in them? They have Germany, Israel, Norway, Japan, and Austria. Those are the top 5 socialized healthcares around the world that work, and Canada's not in there. So anybody listening who thinks Canada's top-notch, free, fucking awesome healthcare, Google it. Google it and leave it in the comments. Leave your proof in the comments that Canada is number 1 for fucking anything. It sounds bad to say that, but prove to me that Canada is number 1 for free healthcare and that it works, because you're going to be coming up with like links to the Onion and the Beaverton. I guarantee you that.
Right. And for healthcare advancements and healthcare technology, USA is one of the highest because they have a capitalist system. But do you think we should end it on that? I don't have much more to say. I said my piece and I stand by it.
And that, my friends, was fuck your feelings.